Flushing girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Oh, Mr. Sheffield, a podcast about The Nanny, a hit sitcom from the 90s starring Fran Drescher. I am Sean DiPasquale, here with...
Toria Sheffield.
That's right, and this week we are talking about Season 5, Episode 19, Immaculate Conception. What is this one about, Toria? Oh, wait, no, yes. What is this one about, Toria?
I was laughing like, what was giving you pause?
I was going to say, I'll tell you, you know what? That's a good segue. What was giving me pause is I was going to say, this one's directed by Dorothy Lyman and written by Robert Sternin. But what is this one about?
Okay, this is the episode where Mr. Sheffield finds out he has a fourth secret sibling, and it starts to affect his inheritance.
Yep. That's what this one is. It's a good episode overall. I actually forgot he had a third sibling for a moment when this episode started. And I was like, why do they keep saying fourth? It's just Nigel. And then I was like, oh, right.
Remember his sister who married her driver?
Yes. Yep. So I forgot about the sister. Also, we should say this episode is all new and different for me because it is the first episode ever that we're recording where I am a married man. And also in my new office. A lot of big changes lately, Toria.
Yes. So we were talking about this a little before the record. We have not spoken since Sean's wedding because he's had such a busy couple of weeks since then. Marriage and then move. But I wanted to say, and I already told him this, but I'll share it with the world. It was such a fun wedding. There was dancing. There was so much genuine just love and warmth coming from all these people. And a lot of people who didn't necessarily know each other. You just were like, oh, we're fam tonight because this is just pure celebration. And so, and I wanted to say, because this is a nanny podcast and I'm sure Fran Fine would want to know, Liz's dress was gorgeous. And I was trying to even think, I was like, how would I describe it to the listener? And it was it was both classic, but chic and contemporary at the same time. Because it was a long dress. It was a gown. And it was very simple. It was not one of those sort of lacy, poofy dresses. I just don't know how to talk about fashion. It was gorgeous. We'll just have to post a photo.
It had a long train. And I will say the one thing I know about the dress that I've always known about the dress, it's the one fact that I always remembered is it had pockets. And she was very excited that it had pockets because she could keep all of her stuff on her, which was a big deal. She was this I found a wedding dress. It was also designed by a Korean woman. So I know that was another big selling point for Elizabeth, who herself is Korean. She was very excited to wear this dress, and I was very excited to see the dress. I will say we won't spend too long talking about the wedding, but I will say my favorite part of the day was they spent the night before the wedding, we did not sleep in the same room. And then the whole day of the wedding, I wasn't allowed to see Elizabeth all the way, and we didn't talk to each other all the way leading up until about 3:00 in the afternoon. Right. So the whole day had gone by, and I hang out a lot with Elizabeth. We spent we both kind of work from home. We spent a lot of time together. So I just had things I wanted to talk to her about all day, And then
so cute.
Dude, and then they we met at City Hall, which is where all the pictures were going to happen. And then we were there and I'm hanging out with the groomsmen people, and my family, who had all come together. And then all of a sudden everyone starts acting real weird. And then the photographer comes over and tells me to close my eyes and leads me all around to the fucking City Hall, outside. It's the Pasadena City Hall is very beautiful outside. Anyway, leads me all around and then so okay, you can open your eyes. And I open my eyes and I'm standing in this big outdoor corridor and I'm looking at all of my friends and the photographer, and all of my friends are looking behind me and they're all oh, and they all look so excited. And then the photographer's okay, don't turn around. And he's taking a bunch of pictures and he's don't turn around, not yet. And I'm okay. And then finally he's okay. And then I feel a hand on my shoulder, and then he's no, wait, still don't turn around. And I'm oh my God, okay, dude. And then he's okay, now you can turn around. And I turned around, and that was the first time I got to see her in the dress and the whole thing. It was very emotional. It was my favorite part of the day. I genuinely, that moment will stick with me. I thought it was so dumb leading up to it. In fact, we have text messages right before that, me and Elizabeth, where I was like, are you guys almost here? And she was like, yeah, I don't know what's taking so long. And I was like, this is dumb. Why did we have to not see each other? And she's like, I have no idea.
That's why.
It was
gorgeous.
great.
It was gorgeous and perfect for the last few episodes of this season.
It really was. Oh, weirdly enough, I thought about the nanny several times during that day. Like, because I'll tell you why. And it's real more relevant, I guess, in the next episode. But like, there was discussion of prenup, which we had been talking about. So it's not like it was dropped on me last minute or anything. But like that was like discussed, and that made me think of like the upcoming episode. And then also I was just thinking about like, oh, I wonder what their wedding is going to be like and what her wedding dress will be like in comparison. Yeah. All right. Well, that's enough wedding talk because people don't come to this podcast to listen to us talk about a bunch of weddings.
Yeah. This isn't our wedding podcast, also on Spotify.
No, they want hot, juicy Fran Fine action. And we've got it in spades this week, folks, because Maxwell finds out that his father has died.
Okay. Yes. So this episode begins. Niles and Fran are in the kitchen and, she's noticing that he's wearing cologne and he has new oven mitts and he's even wearing a girdle. And it's revealed that it's because Miss Babcock is coming back from the sanitarium. But he doesn't want to admit he's excited. It's
a crazy plot.
The whole thing made me laugh. And then Mr. Sheffield comes in and he and Fran kind of start talking about the wedding and like, oh, the wedding planner this, the wedding planner that. And she's like, I should just plan it, And he's like, but we want it to be nice. I mean, chic. I mean, classy. And he just like keeps putting his foot further and further. And while they're talking about that, the phone rings and it turns out it's Mr. Sheffield's brother, Nigel. And he finds out that his father has died. And if we'll remember previously, like Mr. Sheffield has a very complicated relationship with his father. He is very resentful that he left his mother for his secretary, Joan Collins. And so I didn't think he was like necessarily sad enough by all this, but maybe he was in shock. But so then right as that happens, Cece comes in and she goes, why the sourpuss is who died? And then also Fran had a really cute Jackie O-like outfit on in this scene. I loved it. It was like out of a pink top and these black shorts. She looked adorable. But so that's the establishing plot line, which will lead to an even bigger plot line in this next scene. Because we cut to the estate lawyer's office and Fran and Mr. Sheffield and the children are there because they're, going to learn sort of about their inheritance.
Yeah. Did you mention that we also learned that Brighton only wants to inherit the fortune? That's all he really cares about. Like they established that very early on in this, where like Brighton is like solely focused on like how much money are we getting from the old man.
Yeah. I mean, but that really does check out. And then in a very strange note or turn, it turns out that Mr. Sheffield's father has left them a videotape as opposed to just like a regular reading of the will. And he reveals in this tape that he is leaving his entire $100 million estate to his illegitimate secret fourth child, a daughter named Concepcion or Concepcion.
Yeah.
And I was like, where's Joan Collins? Like she should, I'm surprised she's not inheriting stuff. And then so then the lawyer is like, and your sister is here now, invites Concepcion into the room. And she's just this like really sweet Spanish lady. You don't really get a bad vibe from her or anything. She just seems very warm and friendly. And then in the next scene, Fran's in the kitchen licking stamps for her thank you letters for everyone who came to the memorial service. We find out that she actually is using stamps from Brighton's incredibly expensive stamp collection, and she doesn't realize it. And then Cece comes in and sort of sits down next to her, and she instantly starts pulling her old mind games with Fran. She's like, in essence, trying to undermine Fran's security and her connection with Maxwell. And she's basically like, oh, so now that Maxwell doesn't have his inheritance coming, I guess the wedding's definitely not going to happen. And Fran's like, well, like, what do you mean? And she's like, without his father's money, he's going to like run out of money just like that. And like snaps her fingers. And Fran's like, well, I'm not in it for the money. And she's like, you'll be singing a different tune when you and Maxwell have to move in with your mother. Then we have this extended fantasy sequence where Charles Shaughnessy is playing like super against type, and he's like drinking beer, he's belching, he's in Sylvia's kitchen, and Fran is trying to like get him to look through the what are those ads called that used to be called in the newspapers? Qualified ads?
Classified ads.
Classified. Was classified? No.
Classified.
For like looking for yeah. That used to be a thing where ads. You're looking for a job, you could look in the newspaper, and that's where instead of like
in the classifieds.
Yeah. And he's looking, and he's completely unqualified for every job, it turns out.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to Fran and Cece, and she's like, that's not going to happen. That's going to happen. He's too smart to blow all his money. And Cece's like, well, basically like, well, just be careful, because pretty soon he's going to probably like rush off to London to contest the will, because and when he does that, you're going to know he's like really scared. No sooner does she say that, does Maxwell run down the stairs with a suitcase and yell like, I'm going to London real quick. Like runs out. So, like we were establishing that, yes, Mr. Sheffield is in fact very worried about the fact that he's not going to have this money coming to him that he had probably always counted on to some degree. Yeah. And this does sound very stressful, this whole, like, can you imagine, like from everyone's perspective, like obviously not boohoo, like they're still way more privileged than most people, but just the idea of all of it is just still stressful.
Yeah.
And then, Cece's line was so good. When Maxwell runs out, she goes, so far, I'm enjoying my return to sanity very much. Just like it's like a trip, an extension, a little trip away.
Yeah, she just had like a little trip away, and now she's back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In the next scene, Fran is in the kitchen with Sylvia in the mansion, and so Sylvia's distraught.
Sylvia has the best line in the whole episode, in my opinion, in this scene.
Oh yeah,
they're talking about Concepcion getting like the money, and Sylvia's like outraged, right? And she goes, "Why should she end up with all the money? She's not even a real Sheffield like us."
Yes.
Which I thought was so cute.
Yeah,
she's like outraged. She's not even a real Sheffield,
and like. And well, the thing is though, and this is where we kind of do get sort of the crux of Fran's worry about all this, and it's very realistic. She's basically like, Mom, like I know how to economize. Like I didn't grow up with money. She's like, but I am worried about like Maxwell and the children. Like they've only known a life of luxury. This actually could be a much bigger deal, a really hard thing for them, and it might really change a lot of things, in terms of just everything. And so Sylvia convinces Fran to like march down to the hotel that Concepcion is staying at and like demand that she, I guess, share her inheritance, which I don't even know how that would work in any or would be successful in any realistic world, but Fran, she's so forceful that Fran's kind of like, okay, like I'll go talk to her. And then we cut to the hotel, and Fran has brought Sylvia, and they knock on the door, and Concepcion opens it. She and Fran are wearing like very similar outfits, and then her mother, I think Consuela is with her, and she and Sylvia are wearing like
oh my god
similar outfits, and
it was so good. Sylvia and her mom instantly bond over food. They look like each other. Their mannerisms are similar. Like it's so funny. Like I guess it's also supposed to imply that like the Sheffield men have a type.
Yes.
Like
oh yeah, true.
like I like if assuming that like Sylvia didn't always look like the way she looked more like Fran. And that Fran is destined to end up like Sylvia. So it's like the Sheffield men clearly have a type. They love like these loud, boisterous, women from other cultures.
Yes, and like at one point,
colonizers.
Yes. Well, at one point, Sylvia and the other mom are looking over a hotel menu, and Sylvia's like, I think this would be enough food for us. And the other woman goes, no, says served from 8 to 11. not like serves
Not
8 to 11.
serves 8 to 11 people. Yeah.
Yeah. But so then Fran starts talking to Consuela, and she's kind of like fishing around, right? Like to see like, oh, might this woman be open to like sharing her inheritance with her siblings or this or that? And Fran's kind of going to maybe ask outright or bring it up, but then Consuela, who's literally like pouring champagne for them and is like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this, my life is going to be so different now. Like I never really had anything. And then she's like, and all my life, I thought my father was ashamed of me, but the fact that he gave me all this means that I was living in his heart this whole time. And Fran hears that, and she just like can't bring herself to like bring this woman down like in this moment, right? So instead she just kind of like takes her champagne glass and is like, cheers, like to family, which was very sweet.
Very nice. Yeah.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Yeah. And then we go back to the mansion, and this is just a quick beat where Cece and Niles are like kind of in the living room area, and it's revealed that Niles used to visit Cece in the sanitarium while she slept, but only to whisper mean things to her. But she's still weirdly touched. She's like, "You did visit, you old softie."
Yeah, the confession is like pretty like intense when you think about it. Like he was being so mean, but it's played like the sweetest exchange between them that we've ever seen. It's really great.
Well, it's like how they show their love. Like you did show up for me, like, but also to whisper like things that would drive me crazier. And this scene then coming up was very sweet. Fran comes home with Mr. Sheffield, and they sit down, and she's like, honey, she's like, I'm used to being broke, and I can be broke again, but it's going to be a lot harder for you and the kids. So if you need to marry a wealthy person to preserve like your whole life, like I would understand that, which I think is very realistic, that I think someone in her position would like feel all those things. Like maybe would not be as generous as she is about it, but would be like insecure, like this things like circumstances have changed. Maybe this wedding isn't going to be right for this family anymore, right?
Yeah.
And he, like, it was very sweet, like kind of has the opposite. He's like, no, like I definitely want to marry you, but like if you now don't want to marry me because the situation has changed, like I also understand that. And I think it just was super sweet because it showed that they're just marrying for love, both of them, right? Like there's no like other agendas here. And he's like, and besides, they're not taking everything. I'm a successful Broadway producer. And the look on Fran's face, we laugh so hard.
So funny. Yeah.
Like she's clearly been humoring him this whole time, letting him believe that like he's not just a little boy playing with money. Like, and that like, he actually is, quote, like good at this. Like, it was so sweet.
Yeah. Which he's clearly not.
Yes, like, oh yes, of course, honey. Like you are so good at this.
It's a series of increasingly embarrassing failures, but sure.
Yes. And then the doorbell rings, and it's the lawyer who I didn't realize this when we first met him. Did you realize lawyer's first name is Chandler. And I'm like, this is the second Chandler we've had in this series as like
Wow.
a bit part. And I'm like, again, the only other Chandler we've ever known is probably from Friends. Why do they, what's the deal with Chandler on TV shows?
I don't know. Maybe this is just nods to Friends. They loved Friends. They're like, we got to get a Chandler into every season, you guys.
But it's not like there's like a Ross and a Monica.
Hey, we fucking love Chandler, and we're gonna get that name into every season. But boss, that doesn't make any sense. Fran, what are you talking about? I love the name Chandler, and we're putting it in every season. Oh man, we didn't. All right, get to the end so that we can get to segments, because I want to do a segment on our union leader, warrior Fran Drescher.
Okay. So the doorbell rings. It's Chandler, the lawyer, and he comes in and he's like, "Oh, Maxwell, like I actually have some news. Concepcion has decided to share her inheritance with her new siblings," and like Mr. Sheffield kind of gasped because he knew that that Fran had gone to try to talk to her, and that Fran, didn't ultimately say anything, and he kind of looks at Fran and he's like, I thought you didn't ask her for the money. And she's like, I didn't. Like, I just welcomed her into the family. And Chandler's like, which is all she ever wanted. And I went, "Aww." And then I went, remember how Arnold Schwarzenegger had a secret son?
Yes.
I started thinking about that whole thing after watching this episode and just how crazy that was.
Yep.
But then, so that it turns out, like, as we've seen in a previous episode this season, Fran's like warm-heartedness and good-heartedness like saves the day, right? And then we kind of had this weird line where I was like, they just didn't really know how to wrap this up, because Mr. Sheffield just goes, "You're the best, baby," and kisses her. It's kind of like, oh, okay. And
they were trying out a new catchphrase.
Baby,
you're the best, baby.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, it did not work out.
No, we never hear of it again. And then the button is just Niles is dusting in the living room, and he's continuing to make Cece feel like she's insane, to the point where I think Cece then takes out a bottle of pills and tells Gracie, like, "Tell your father I'll be going away for a little while." So I think that is just, she's going back to the sanitarium because she's still going to be on maternity leave in real life is what I think that was all about.
Yeah, so do I.
Mm-hmm. And that was the whole episode. Easy breezy, nice and easy.
Yeah.
Take it easy. Crisscross applesauce.
Hey, we did it. Crisscross applesauce. We did it. All right. Well, listen, that was an episode, which means it's time for segments. And now, segments.
So, segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
Segments with Sean and Toria.
All right, let me just start by saying Fran Drescher is having a moment, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we got to acknowledge Fran Drescher she's having a moment. It's so funny how fickle people are, because it was like a month and a half ago, people were like, "Oh, that crazy anti-vaxxer." And now they're like, Fran's back, baby, and she's leading the union revolution. Like, she is here to start the workers' revolution in this country. Fran is leading the charge. SAG-AFTRA has gone on strike. We talked a little bit about this, I believe, in a previous episode, the writer's strike. And now the actors are on strike. And at the lead is Fran Drescher, who gave this fiery speech that I recommend people Google and look it up on YouTube. Fran Drescher, SAG-AFTRA speech. I'm sure you can find it. She was pretty great, man. She's a good actress. It was very compelling. Like, and also my big takeaway from it, we don't have to dwell too long, but my big takeaway was, and I thought it was very good, but it was also very funny to me because she just comes off like if my mom, like if any old Jewish
Yes.
woman was leading like a revolution, like she's her surprise. Like at one point she goes like, "You would not believe what these people think of us. Like these billionaires, they don't even respect us." Like it was she was just shocked by the audacity of these people, and it was very much like, yeah, mom, we know like billionaires are terrible and these corporations take advantage of us, but she was like, I cannot believe the disrespect that we were showing.
But I'll say this too, she is really having a moment where like people will say to me like, who are even out in LA, you know, they did not realize she was head of SAG-AFTRA. And I, of course, I'm like, yes, I've known this. I've been very involved with what Fran Drescher's up to, because we literally host a podcast about it every single week. And I'm like, and I've known that she is passionate about collective bargaining and union rights. She literally made that a character trait of Fran Fine. And, you know, I've read a lot about her family and her parents and her background. So like, this is not surprising to me. But it's just, she's having so much of a moment that, you know, both Sean and I were so busy earlier this week that like neither of us were really checking social media. But a reporter from the Wall Street Journal had reached out to us on Instagram asking for interview quotes from her fans, because literally there's going to be this piece in the art section of the Wall Street Journal about it. And I was like, that would have been so fun, Sean. It just would have been like the most legitimate thing we'd ever been asked.
That's ever happened to us. I know. It's a shame that we missed that.
Yeah. And I'll say this too. And you know what? I think this segment, I'll just have it replace Nanny Trivia this week, and we'll just kind of like rearrange things a little. But I was watching I will say this. I definitely do know that Fran Drescher is very aware of like corporations' effect on the public safety and interest. I don't think that is not news to her, in that she did found Cancer Schmancer, which is very much a health related nonprofit trying to teach people about like, you know, toxins in their food or the water, or making choices that will benefit their health. And I literally did pop up on my Instagram feed a couple weeks ago. It was like a Jewish mother saying it, but it was also very right. She was like very impassioned. She was at some sort of like health lecture, and she's like, let me tell you, if we stopped buying cola today, they'd stop. She goes, they'd stop making it tomorrow. And she's like, it doesn't matter what any lobbyist or any policy does, like, because that's the bottom line. And she's like, you have so much power in your dollars. And she was like, that's how we will make change. And so it was just, again, it was, I was like, that's so great. I was like, it was very impassioned, very like, you know, this is how we will fight the people who do not have our best interests at heart, but who are controlling everything. So it was, but anyway, so let's just we're giving a round of applause, and then
round of applause to Fran Drescher. She's really pulling it out and really sticking up, standing up for the people, and support unions, support actors that are out of work now, support writers that are out of work now. There are writers funds and actors funds that you can donate to if you want to give monetary support, or if you just want to retweet a bunch of stuff or talk about it online or with your friends. Unions are important. They protect the people, and corporations are bad. Okay. On that note, let's move on to, let's see. We'll say that was updates.
That was trivia.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite lines and moments. I covered a lot of mine. What were some of yours?
I liked it when they are at the lawyer's office, the whole family, after they find out Mr. Sheffield's father has died, and like the kids say something kind of like insensitive, and Fran's like, you know, it's very traumatic when a man loses his father. He no longer has anyone to look up to. He's next in line to die. It's depressing. And she like, and then she looks at him and she's like, you can lean on me, honey. Like, after saying like the most depressing thing she could say to him. And then I really like that Fran is like unwittingly licking Brighton's incredibly extensive stamp collection that's like worth like the amount of a Porsche or something. And then there was this very dark line where Niles says something mean to Cece. And she's back from the sanitarium. And as she is literally pouring some pills, she like casually takes a bottle of pills out of her pocket and starts pouring them into her hand. And she goes, if 220 volts of electricity can't hurt me, 300 pounds of butler sure can't either. It was just I went so dark, so funny. She was going having like electroshock therapy at the sanitarium.
Also, it's also like he's not 300 pounds. It's such a good like jab at him being fat.
Uh-huh.
It was great. Yeah. I mean, I said most of mine. I would say my favorite moments were honestly all of the CeCe Niles stuff. It was great to have her back, and I love the acknowledgement of the asylum I love the playing up of her whole trip to the asylum that they did in this episode. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
All right. So what else?
Yeah, that's it for me. So I was going to do Yiddish.
Yiddish. Was there Yiddish?
There was Bupkas, which
Bupkas,
Niles is like, Niles is at one point is like, are you sure I wasn't mentioned in the will? You know, Mr. Sheffield's father always said I was like a son to him. And then Fran goes, you got Bupkas too. Like you also got nothing, just like his actual son. Yep. Okay. And so we already did our nanny trivia / in the world. So for the Fran or the CeCe or whoever, I really related to Fran because I think I would have the exact same reaction as her and would, even if it wasn't my fault in any way, would feel really guilty that like he was going to marry me and I wasn't able to help the situation, right? Like I would somehow in my head make myself like feel bad about it, right? And then also I said I've never been able to date for the motivation of money. And I was like, I honestly wish I could. Like probably my life would be so much easier if I could just be that person that like laughs at whatever that person says and just be like, well, like so many other things in my life are going to be easier. Like I can swallow this pill, but like I can't.
I really didn't relate to anyone in this episode until we started recording this episode of the podcast. And we had to do like 4 restarts because I just couldn't get the intro right. And then I realized in that moment that I actually relate to CeCe because going from planning a wedding to having a wedding to immediately having a week to pack our entire apartment to moving to then a week to unpack the apartment so that we could all get back to work and life. And then just coming back to this show, I felt like I had been crazy for 2 weeks and now I'm back to the normal world. And by the end of recording this, I just want to eat a bunch of pills and go back I just want to go back to my wedding.
Oh, I do too. It was so fun.
I just want to go back to my happy place. All right. Well, listen, as always, we couldn't do the show if people didn't listen to it. I mean, we could, but why would we? So thank you to everybody who listens. If you listen and you haven't reached out to us, you really should because we're very friendly and we love to talk to people. You can do that on Instagram or Twitter at @OhMrChefPod. Or also you can email us at ohmrsheffieldpodcast@gmail.com as our fan Liz Mary did. And I just want to quickly we read every single email that you send. Sometimes they stand out so much that we want to bring them up. This one I actually read to Toria a couple of weeks ago, and we were like, ooh, we should put that in the notes to read it in the next episode we record because it's a really good quote, really good comment about the show. So Liz Mary writes, for a few episodes, you guys have had conversations about how the show isn't consistent, about how Fran and Max feel about each other in season 3. I think that it is just part of being in a situationship. I think it is relatable that they have an idea about how the other feels, but since Maxwell isn't ready, they talk about it randomly and then ignore the elephant in the room. They kind of check on each other every once in a while just to make sure that nothing has changed since they last spoke about it. Which, good point, right? I mean, that is what they have. They got a situationship.
I thought that was so. I was like, that's it. That's exactly it. Like,
yep,
perfect.
Nailed it. Nailed it, Liz Mary.
Liz Mary should host this podcast. That's a better insight than either of us have had about this in 3 years.
Guess what? I wish she would. I wish she would host it. I wish she would take my place.
Dare you? How dare you? No, but I really mean it. When I read that, I was like, oh, yes, that is the perfect way to say it.
Yeah.
I was very like, yes. Okay. And so
all right. That's it.
I think that's it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it. That's a show. So on that note, goodbye.
Goodbye.
The Flashing Girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
I go, Miss Fine,